Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tank12, however you call me, I don't really care, and welcome back to World of Tanks. Now, when this video comes out, we have probably already reviewed the ISU 152K and some other premium tanks, but yeah, you can't always have enjoyable experiences. That's what we're going to be talking about today, the M48 Rpz. This is a premium tank that was released 2 years ago, a month after they released the TLLC, which is an American kind of patent tank, and it is kind of worse in every way imaginable. This is the M48 A2 Panzer, which is actually a German tier 8 premium medium tank. And this tank, well, it just was released after they released the transnational tanks like the Rudy, which you can use for the Polish and the Russian tech tree, and you can either train the crew of the Polish tank or for the Polish tanks or for the Russian tanks. And actually the M48, since it's an American tank that is in service, at least this version right here was in service with the Bundeswehr, with the German army, they could have done the same thing, but they didn't. This tank didn't sell very well, and there are several reasons for that. You can still see that not a lot of people are playing this vehicle because the damage that you have to do to reach, to reach the marks of excellence, to get the 3 marks of excellence on this vehicle is only 1,330, which is pathetically low. But there's a reason for it. I think a lot of people didn't buy this tank, and for good reason. And a lot of people didn't enjoy it, and there are only a few ones still playing it from, day to day, since this is based on, I think, the last 2 weeks, and it's based on the last 2 weeks stats of everyone playing this vehicle. So the M48 Rpz, it isn't a really good tank. The special feature about this vehicle is the bulldozer at front. This tank was used by the Bundeswehr to clear rubble, and after 1990, I think, when it was phased out, they used it without the barrel, without any armament, to clear probably obstacles away. So this bulldozer is the one very unique feature about this vehicle, and also it's one of the annoying features that a lot of people were upset about when they added it into the game. So can you put the bulldozer down? Is it some kind of in-game mechanic? No, it's not. The bulldozer is basically just spaced armor. It's 30 millimeters thick, and it's going to give you an additional armor, spaced armor at the front of your vehicle. This is the old M48, so you'll know that the old M48 had certain benefits. For example, it had really good hull armor and really decent turret armor as well, but it had one big flaw. And the flaw was obviously the commander's cupola on top. So when you're playing this tank, or if you even own it, and I'm gonna tell you guys if you should buy it or not, so I can already tell you that much, that this is definitely not worth it. But we'll get to the reasons why it's not worth it in just a second. If you're playing this vehicle, your commander is going to get knocked out constantly because people will be shooting this weak spot on top. It doesn't matter how much armor you have over here if everyone is just shooting your turret commander's cupola on top, because it's going to go through. If we take a look at the armor viewer, it's only about 150 millimeters thick. At the thickest part, it's maybe 170. So yeah, you're not going to be able to survive a lot of engagements if you're too close with this vehicle. So why did I buy this vehicle? Well, I'm a tank collector, or at least I used to be one, and I'm a huge fan of the M48. I didn't know that the M48 Rpz was going to be as bad as it is, but I really enjoyed the M48s that we had. I enjoyed the M60, I enjoyed the M48 A5 patent, the American tier 10, and I thought I was going to enjoy this one, since it's based on an M48. It's just the A2, and it's sized down to a tier 8 vehicle, so the stats should be, kind of on par with other tier 8 vehicles. So let's take a look at the characteristics that we have. So the very first thing you'll notice is you have a 90mm gun, 240 alpha, 205 millimeters of penetration. You have APCR shells as premium shells, which have up to 255 millimeters of pen. And to be fair, these APCR shells aren't really good. Your AP shells aren't as impressive either, but your APCR shells, well, they aren't really that impressive either. I think a lot of people would have enjoyed heat much more because you are much more versatile than with APCR, but turns out they added in APCR, so you have to use them if you want to use premium shells. The rate of fire is 8.61 rounds per minute. You can up that with the right kind of equipment, but you know, it's not that great. For a tank with a 90mm gun, you do not want to be reloading for 6.97 seconds, and the DPM of 2066 isn't as impressive either. But the biggest problem on this vehicle is this right down here. The dispersion is 0.39 at 100 meters, and that's pretty awful if you ask me. So this tank is not very accurate at all, and that's one of the things that I, you know, got really used to with my M48 and even with my M46 pattern, with the Pershing, the M26. They always were accurate, and this tank just isn't. It has great aim time, it has decent gun depression and gun elevation, and the gun traverse or the turret traverse isn't the best with 36.8. It's rather slow for a medium tank, but it could also be even worse if you think about it. But like, generally speaking, these stats aren't horrible, but they're just not up to par, and there's not really a reason to play this tank if there are other premium tanks available out there, such as maybe the Muts. I'd much rather have less armor but have a better gun. So the one thing that probably will be the saving, or the one upside, is the armor of this vehicle. It still is an M48, so it has 254mm on the turret at the front, 76 on the side, 51 on the rear of the turret. You have 152 at the front of the turret, of the hull, 76 on the side, 25 on the rear. So this tank can withstand some shots, especially with this bulldozer. You're able to bounce quite a few rounds, and with the turret if you hold down. The problem is just this cupola on top. People will get, you know, if they have any kind of game knowledge, they'll be able to figure out that the cupola on top is a massive weak spot, and it's rather large as well, so it's very easy to hit even from distance. So that kind of neglects, or, you know, counteracts the entire armor thing that you have going. You still are going to have certain games where you're going to be bouncing a lot of shells and where you're going to be using your armor very effectively, but in the end, people will figure out that that big thing on top is a weak spot, and most of the time, you're going to be playing against some people that know a thing or two about M48s and the old M48s as well. So they're going to be just focusing that thing on top, because why would you shoot the lower plate if it's just that much more difficult to figure out where the lower plate actually is and where the spaced armor is. So there are going to be a lot of forced bounces on the lower plate, but there are going to be a lot of pens on the weak spot on top. So mobility wise, this tank cannot really be redeemed in any way. 40 kilometers per hour top speed. It is an M48. If we take a look at the pattern, it's only, I think, 45 kilometers. And that's even with no, actually it's 45. We could do 50 with the equipment, but at least the M48 is a bit faster and it feels more mobile, because this tank only has 650 horsepower engine inside of it, and you can see that the specific power to weight is pretty terrible with 12.88 horsepower per ton. So your tank is not going to be very fast. Yeah, top speed is not great, 40 kilometers, 18 kilometers backwards. Yeah, this tank isn't really the fastest. You're going to be trailing a lot of other medium tanks. You're going to be following them instead of leading the way. That could be a good thing, or it could also be a bad thing if you need to push into a position early on. Now the traverse speed is decent, 44.49 degrees per second, so I don't really have a lot to complain about there. Concealment wise and spotting wise, this tank is a bit special. You usually have very good view range with M48s or with patents, since that was one of the main features. This tank has 380 meters base view range, and that is just not really good enough. And one of the things that is really annoying about this vehicle is that the loader is also the radio operator. That means you'll have to train situational awareness onto the radio operator, which is the loader in this case, and not on your commander, because most of the vehicles have the commander as radio operator as well. So I have the radio operator skill, or the situational awareness skill, on my major, which is my commander. And the problem is that, yeah, my Oberleutnant down here just doesn't have that skill. So that's a thing that you have to keep in mind. So should you buy this tank based off the stats? This vehicle was very unpopular when it was released, because Wargaming just released it kind of, you know, I think in 2019 before Halloween, and there was no Halloween event in 2019. This was maybe supposed to be an Halloween marathon tank event, but they pushed it out. People didn't really love it. People didn't really like it. I didn't like it at all. I still don't like it at all. It's a tank that doesn't really gets played a lot. People don't enjoy it, and I understand why. It's an M48, but it's just in no way, shape, or any kind of form a good M48. So it's not very enjoyable. The armor does hold up as long as they don't know about the weak spot. The gun is just not good enough. The gun handling is okay, but it just doesn't feel like a vehicle that you could be really effective in, and you'll see that in just the gameplay that I'm going to show you. So I'd say without further ado, let's move on to the game and see for ourselves what kind of a vehicle this really is. So the game that I've prepared for you guys is in a tier 8 matchup. Now remember, this M48 A2 Panzer does not have preferential matchmaking, so you will be facing tier 10s and tier 9 vehicles, and it's not going to be a lot of fun. I can say that much already up front. I've played about 5 games for this review, and out of the 5, I certainly had 3 tier 10 experiences, and it's just not a lot of fun. Let's say that. I can say that up front immediately. Going up against tier 10s in the M48 A2 Panzer is not a very enjoyable experience. So, we're playing on the map El Halouf, and there is a good position that we can take with this tank. You have 9 degrees of gun depression, so you're obviously going to be going over to the C2 area to slug it out with some other medium tanks. If they cannot hit your weak spot, you should be quite fine as long as you stay on the lower side, if you can stay hull down, because I think your lower plate is still a bit of a weak spot, but only if they're able to really hit the right position. That's with this, you know, with this bulldozer is a bit difficult. It's a bit tricky to do so. So yeah, you can see the vehicle isn't really fast. It takes a while to get to the position, takes a while to reach the top speed, and it's definitely no match to the Skoda T27 or the Progetto 46, but both of these vehicles don't have any armor. That's the big upside that you have on this vehicle. You do have some armor that the other ones just do not have. And that armor can be quite helpful in situations such as this. And I have to say, this is probably going to be the ideal scenario for the M48 A2 Panzer, to be in a place like this with only 1 artillery piece, because you don't want to be too far away from your opponents, since you only have accuracy of 0.39, so you really need to get close and personal with this vehicle. And getting close and personal with this tank is just not an option. So right there, we actually tracked the T26 E4, and we're going to try to go for the cupola shot right next to him. But unfortunately, we are unable to do so because of a little bit of a rock that was sticking out. But we did manage to bounce 1 shot from him. We also bounced the Löwe right there. Probably in a Progetto or in a Skoda would have been able to pen him right there, because that shot did go to the right position. Same with the IS-22. A bit of an awkward scenario right now because we didn't hit those targets. The rate of fire is decent, but it's not the best. I would much rather prefer a bit of a better rate of fire, and this thing would probably be more competitive. I think you could fix quite a few things if you just give it a bit better gun handling and maybe more, better DPM. then I think this tank could be quite a viable option. But I have the feeling that Wargaming also have kind of forgotten about this vehicle, and they don't really want to be reminded of this tank existing. So unfortunately, again, we bounced the Löwe. We have 205mm of pen. There are certain tier 8 premium tanks that have less pen, so I think a lot of those shots were just badly aimed, but that one goes right through the T26 E4, and we just put one right in the side of his armor. We do it again. That is quite interesting to see that we are able to actually find the needle right there and hit him on the side of his tank. And I don't know where that shot went, but it somehow penetrated his turret right there. And you can see we're bouncing some shots from the T26 E4. He's kind of getting frustrated. He's firing gold now. And, you know, being in a position where you're hull down, this tank is actually decent. You just really have to be aware of the weak spots of the vehicles that you're going up against. But as soon as you're going up against tier 9s and 10s, I think your luck is going to change, as our luck is changing right here with the Löwe. Artillery also gets involved. The Löwe right here is a bit of a problem for us. Somehow that shot just got caught in the Progetto, I think. But it's really important for us right now to keep this Löwe in position, track him, and we get some assistance from the T27, and we're able to take him out. So that was a very important kill, because this Löwe has had a lot of HP and he was quite an aggressive player. Unfortunately, artillery is all over us. Artillery hit us directly, but only did 59 damage, which is quite interesting to see, since I think artillery hit the side of the turret or the front of the turret more or less. And yeah, it's 254mm, so it's quite thick for even a tier 10 standard. That is quite thick. That's a lot of armor. So yeah, unfortunately we're gonna lose this game, because the majority of our team got absolutely annihilated on the in the base and in that fishbowl by one ELC even 90. That's really interesting. This ELC even 90 even pushed further into our base. But you can still see that we can do quite a bit of damage with this vehicle if we are able to, you know, work with our gun. But unfortunately, we're going to die here in this position, because the STA-1 decided to shoot heat shells at us, and he managed to penetrate our weak spot on top. So yeah, we bounced quite a lot of damage, 2,240 for a medium tank. That is that's a big, substantial amount of damage blocked. But keep in mind that somehow they didn't aim for my weak spot, and that's just something that is not going to be happening every game. You're going to have some games where you're lucky, where nobody's really shooting your cupola on top, but those are going to be very far and in between. This was the only game where they really didn't shoot my cupola on top, and the only game where they really needed to shoot my cupola, because all of the other games I was just flanked by several other vehicles, and it was just not a lot of fun. With the rate of fire, the DPM, and everything just being so mediocre on this vehicle, there is no real redeeming factor. The armor is nice, but as soon as they see the cupola on top, the tank is just kind of done, and you know that you're not going to have a good game in it. It kind of is an arty magnet as well, because it is an M48, it's quite large, it's easy to hit, but the gun just doesn't feel good enough. The mobility is mediocre at best, the gun is mediocre at best, the armor is good, but the weak spot is horrible. So you're you're looking at a tank that just doesn't really have any redeeming features. And I would really say this tank is absolutely not a buy for anyone. It shouldn't be bought, even for the M48 fans, because this tank just isn't really good. Unless you want to have a tank that's easy to get 3 marks of excellence in, because if you only get 1,330 damage, you're gonna get 95% on this tank, and that's 3 mark, because nobody plays this vehicle. No one plays it, no one enjoys it, and I think in the current meta, where speed and the gun handling and, you know, just punch and rate of fire is key, this tank just gets left behind very, very quickly. Probably one of my worst buys of premium tanks. It's just not special. The only thing that's really cool was the bulldozer, but the bulldozer doesn't really do anything. So yeah, as I already mentioned, I would not recommend this tank. Do not buy it. If you have the chance and you want something that's like an M48, go for the TL1C, or I'm not even sure what it's called anymore, but it's the one tank which had the Offspring crew in it, and that tank probably doesn't get sold anymore anyway. But if this tank comes out in a sale, really only buy it if it's really cheap. Don't spend a lot of money on it because it's not worth it. Hopefully this review did help out, and I'll see you guys on the next video.